If you have any prepared remarks, they will, without objection, appear in the record in their entirety, and we welcome your summary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and move it along because having served on this committee, I appreciate your service. I'm glad I'm not any longer in that service, but what this committee does very important work, and I'm glad to be here, and I like the decor from California. I want to start out by saying a couple things. There are 37 million underwater mortgages in America right now. The 1.5 million subprime mortgages may have precipitated this problem, but most of them have been cleared at this point. And those 37 million underwater Americans are your friends and mine who work hard every day trying to make ends meet. And I will say very bluntly that I don't think the administration's foreclosure programs have worked at all. In fact, they have been an abysmal failure. Those of you who served with me on this committee in the last 2 sessions of Congress have heard me complain about that ad nauseum. And that's why I am submitting this amendment today and offering what I believe is a far-reaching, economically responsible alternative to these failing programs. The housing crisis has reached a level that is worse than the Great Depression in both size and scope of economic devastation. Let me use my district as an example. Modesto, Stockton, and Merced have the 3rd, 7th, and 8th highest foreclosure rates in the country. They have remained in the top 10 since the start of the recession. Some of my smaller communities face foreclosure rates in excess of 30%. Now, these are not all irresponsible people. These are not all people that didn't understand and needed counseling. When the value of housing drops 68% and drops below the cost of new construction, you have economic factors that are going on that are much greater than the need for counseling. And that's why I believe there's a role for my bill in the federal mix. The solution I propose is simple. The GSEs would be required, since we own most all these loans anyway, the bad ones, would be required to allow all homeowners the opportunity to refinance at a fixed single-digit market-based rate. This would enable homeowners with a Fannie or Freddie-backed mortgage to take advantage of historically low mortgage prices and to extend their mortgage to 40 years. This amendment would allow Freddie and Fannie to resell mortgage-backed securities to cover the costs of this refinancing, and the investors would get paid off at par value. Refinancing could save middle-income homeowners up to $1,000 a month, and it would free up money that homeowners could then spend on repairs and other immediate needs, boosting the economic recovery. This would also be a win for the U.S. taxpayer because ultimately all those homes with mortgages backed by GSEs become the debt responsibility of the federal government when they're foreclosed upon. My amendment will stop the domino effect that begins a foreclosure and ends with taxpayers being left with the bill. On a larger scale, this program would stabilize the housing market and by extension the economy by sharply reducing foreclosures, thereby establishing a floor on housing prices. Finally, it would help cash-strapped communities that are currently struggling to deal with their declining property tax bases. This amendment is timely, it's common sense, and it's desperately needed by our constituents. I'm well aware that this isn't a silver bullet, and it won't solve all our housing sector problems, but I believe the proposal is a foundation for future growth. 2 million additional foreclosures are predicted to be on the books this year, more than the previous year. The alternative to doing nothing is that millions of Americans will continue to lose their homes, and our economy will continue to be held down by the lack of confidence in the housing market, which is on life support. My colleagues, this is simply an unacceptable situation, and I'd just like to add that I believe it's very important that as we debate these topics, that Congress, and myself included, update our knowledge on these issues, because where we started in this crisis with the subprime meltdown is no longer what's going on in the market today. And those areas that are affected, like mine, like Miami, like to the east of Mr. Dreyer's district, you get away from the coasts, and Middle America is having a really tough time. And my solution may not be the whole answer, but I think it ought to be in the mix. And I agree that the administration's programs haven't been working. And what we should do as government, part of getting efficiency out of our government is making sure that what we're paying for works. And I think that spending a little money in this kind of a program is a much better investment than spending in what we're currently doing right now. The fact that we've only had 44 modifications in that program is in and of itself a testament to why we need to make this change.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cardoza. Again, welcome back, and I will say that obviously we're very sympathetic. You're right. As I look to the east of the area I represent, I just had some people in from that area, and the unemployment rate is not as high as it is in your district, but it is still unacceptably high, and it has to do in large part with the issue of foreclosures. And I think that you have a very interesting and creative proposal. As you know, Mr. McGovern raised this as a concern. We are, at this juncture, looking to have the most open process that we can for consideration of this measure. And so I suspect that this committee is going to be reporting out a modified open rule for consideration of it. Now, you served 4 sessions on this committee, 2 Congresses, and I will tell you that during that period of time, there was no more eloquent case made to avoid the waiver of PAYGO than the arguments that you regularly propounded. And as you know, we've put into place this notion of focusing on reducing spending, and we have the cut-go provision. And I know that if the gentleman were on this committee, he would be equally troubled with the idea of a waiver, which is what your amendment will require. Now, what I would recommend is 2 things. First, to see if it would be at all possible for you, under this open process that we're going to have, working with the parliamentarian to see if maybe not the exact proposal, but some kind of language that can move in that direction could be in order under the open amendment process, number 1. And number 2, I would propose that you, as was pointed out by Ms. Fox earlier, this is not the sole opportunity to deal with this issue. We have 2 measures. They're going to be coming up next week. We have two bills here, and so we're obviously trying to find out ways in which we can ensure that people will not be hurt, but at the same time, get rid of programs that have been less than successful. And so I think that there may be an opportunity there, and so that's the advice that I would give to my friend. And again, I know that he was always very, very passionate in his opposition to the waivers when it came to the PAYGO issue.
Well, Mr. Dreyer, I think that this is a legitimate case for trying to make government work better and actually reducing cost. I heard the number bandied around that this bill's got $8 billion in it. We have had just very preliminary discussions with the CBO. We don't have a score that would work for the purposes of this committee, but I believe that the score would come in based on some conversations I've had below $5 billion. So if you eliminate one, substitute for this, you'd actually have a savings of $3 billion and a program that would save millions of Americans their homes.
I think it's a very interesting idea. You're right. There are questions about exactly what the savings would be, and I would recommend that you pursue those just as diligently.
We have introduced this as a bill, freestanding bill. I've done it in the last 3 sessions of Congress. Mm-hmm. And I've discussed it with Mr. Bush's administration. I've demanded a meeting with the President. I've discussed it with him and his Treasury Secretary on many occasions. For whatever reasons, we can't seem to get traction, and then maybe that we'll have an epiphany in this committee and allow this bill to go forward.
Well, if we were to do it, I will tell you we wouldn't have the open amendment process that we have said that we want to have on this, because it would require doing what you, again, opposed vigorously up here if we were to do that. So I just want you to know that we're committed to as open a process as we can. Mr. Sessions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dennis, thanks for coming and sitting in and listening not only to your colleagues, but also the ideas that are always a part of the